Okay, so what's interesting about that? Well, I'm supposed to be moderating, and that's probably supposed to be putting me in a neutral position.
No, you're right.
But okay, but I disagree. I disagree with that. You know, people will value and listen to something that's more quantifiable. I think that is a reaction based on the models, the system that happens around us, and in fact. I find that more people that try to quantify stuff like social capital, the more that it's no longer fun. We're doing it for the wrong reasons. It changes the motivation, but it also you just can't capture it. Algorithm or not, it would have to be something with some sort of wizard as part of the core, like magic sauce or something in it, because it's ever yeah, like a software that Microsoft. So because it's so individually based, I think. I mean, our relationships are, how we value things. Like if we take this down to a discussion about value, like what we value, that changes everything.
Well, but triple bottom line, right? I mean, so there have been a couple of broad market initiatives around trying to do this, but I think what you're hitting on here is the important qualifier, which is that it depends on the situation in the market.
Right.
And that there are certain places we can do. So, for instance, M&A activity. Having a very strong, broadly accepted way to measure the unquantifiable is very important in that. When we're talking about in the bartering community, on the local level of what Nikki's doing, I don't know that has much value, because it does take away from the social good and the feeling of community. So I would just say, again, it's situational.
Well, I mean, I think, the story you're telling, to me, rings true as a story. Like, because when you're quantifying it, the bridge example is like the thing I'm like, oh yeah, I get it, that makes sense. 1 to 1,000, so like actually from a storytelling perspective, I felt the value of the social, so I mean, yeah, but as far as I mean, the algorithm, whatever, I just don't understand how you measure, the amount of knowledge that's shared or.
It's not meant to be perfect.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
a substrate.
And that's what I'm
upon
saying.
which the entrepreneurs will do the rest of the work.
Right.
You just got to give the entrepreneurs a game they can win playing by the rules, and then let them take care of it. So we don't go any farther than just this and trying to make this a better substrate.
Has anyone here in the room actually been in a situation where you've sold your company based on the number of community members or users you have, and you've had to agree upon the value of each community member? Anyone?
I've been involved in a non-successful sale.
Yeah.
But I mean, isn't that whole conversation at that point, when you're basing it on user value, when it was MindSpring or whoever, based around that? I mean, you can do some forward projection on revenue and lifetime value and all that stuff. Yeah. But then ultimately, the final part is, what's the premium worth? What's the extra bit when what is it? Hertz is buying Thrifty or something today, right? They're paying a 6% premium. That's the intangibles. So we're just looking at applying these principles in different ways.
Okay, so first of all, do you still have a question?
Yeah. So I think I guess in a market where we do have, kind of a supply and demand model, to some extent, like we are calculating these things. Like what you were saying before, you're not going to talk to the person who's like coming up to you and pitching your business card. You're talking to the person you're chilling out with at the water cooler. Well, then if I want to sell to you, I'm incentivized to like chat with you at the water cooler, right?
Exactly.
So, I mean, to some extent, I think these things are their own reward. And then even with the neighborhood goods, you're talking about how much like, oh, you live in a neighborhood, and like it's really like fun and good for you. Well, that's why you're doing it. If your neighborhood, they, went to like, crap or whatever, and people stopped being a good place to help out of that, then like you just wouldn't do it anymore. And the reason why you're able to do this, quite frankly, is you're probably, doing all right. You have extra time that you can like kind of engage your neighborhood. Like there's a certain hierarchy of needs. At some point, like you're stuck. You gotta make money from everything, so you've got no food, no house, whatever. But then like get to another point, and you are able to do stuff like this, and like they are their own reward, because like the only thing we're not rewarded by is money. And then like with the Brit, I mean that's kind of like why we have taxes, because there's some stuff where people who can't afford it, they are stuck, and like we got to figure out how to like put money in the pot and have the government do it. Maybe there's a better way than that. But I think we are kind of quantifying stuff.
Right, it's really, that's another issue. We're getting, actually, one of our clients is trying to evaluate all these government shared resources. Well, how do you do it? Do you do it in a Goldman Sachs value, or do you do it to a social to a social model, like NOAA, the National Oceanographic Atmospheric Agency. You know, Goldman Sachs would give them a value of like $4 billion just replacing their boats and their satellites. But the actual ability to predict the weather, it adds $4 trillion to the global economy, which is a factor of 1,000 to 1. So how do you, what deficit? I mean, if you were to put a value on these shared assets, you know, that deficit disappears if you're using a social currency, whereas you've got this humongous deficit if you use a financial currency because it's losing its ability to store all that value.
All right,
I know. I take lots of bullets, so don't worry. Give it to me.
So I just have sort of a comment, and you might go somewhere with it. First of all, it's sort of like the Visa commercial, right? Like cut this cost, prices. But
Yeah, very.
But as I'm sitting here, like I prepared for this conference by really digging into the history of money, and it's sort of like what's funny to me about this whole conversation right now is that the reason we're sitting here trying to value this stuff is because money happened in the first place.
Yeah.
We wouldn't be having this conversation if money hadn't hit us a few thousand years ago. And it also makes me feel like something else really is hitting us right now that's going to dramatically reframe our culture. Like what's happening to money happens to our culture, and something's really dramatically happening to money right now. So
Do you predict? I'm gonna put you on the spot. Would you predict that money as we know it will disappear in our lifetimes?
like coins? Or
If Goldman Sachs will have it,
well,
right?
I saw not long ago. I saw a presentation that basically all money is virtual now, right? Because we
essentially 8% of our monetary supply right now is physical in the United States. 8%.
But even that isn't tied to any value, right? Used to be there was a stack of gold somewhere that represented every dollar that we carry around. Now it's just a piece of paper that's worth less.
Well, originally a dollar, the money was supposed to represent human productivity of the rancher, of the raiser. But what happened with the financial system is that human productivity became divorced from money. Okay, that dollar no longer represents somebody's promise to pay a promise to pay a promise now. It's been divorced. They don't know where it is now. So it's failing in its purpose to articulate productivity. A social currency is superior in its means.
It's actually more tangible in the end of the day.
It is. In fact, it should be. We're not trying to destroy the financial system. We're trying to get money to come back and replace productivity again, so that we can all do stuff.
If I am really super cool, I can just be a millionaire.
You know, but you can live like one. Did you see the Madman episode in Palm Springs? If you were cool enough, you could live like one.
There you go.
I like how you said if you were cool enough.
Well, we know John is, but that's another story.
As you let go of making exchanges quantifiable, how important is then to insert more visibility and public awareness about the exchanges so people can see who's putting what in, who's taking what out? Have you seen any good things that work to put the spotlight on the exchanges? And is there such a thing as too much publicity where it gets embarrassing?
Well, that's how Neighborhood works. I mean, Neighborhood, everything is transparent, so we don't use points or, we haven't come up with an alternative system. We just show you how much money you're saving, how much money you've saved your neighbors, how many times you've transacted. Every transaction is transparent, so you can see who shared what with who, and see the feedback right there. So each item builds a history. This person used the power drill to build a crib. This person used it to hang artwork. So each item actually builds a social profile within the community. I mean, that is the tool we're using on Neighborhoods. It's just information transparency. Like, we're not trying to build an alternative currency. We're just interacting within the systems that are already in place.
And the value is the difference between going to Home Depot and buying a drill and joining your community. That's the value that this organization generates, and it's substantially large.
But I think there's also residual lots of residual
Exactly.
value.
When you start putting in the ripple effect and all that.
Well,
you can't calculate. It's because it changes per neighborhood exchange.